Hi everyone, this is Fabio SantoS from the Ascension Wisdom channel. Hi everyone, this is Fabio SantoS from the Ascension Wisdom channel in English and also Educação Consciencial channel in Portuguese. As posted on the AOL Research website, llresearch.org, the Law of One material represents the crowning achievement of Don Elkins' life and work along with his other two research associates, Carla L. Ruckert, and our guest today, Jim McCarty. Jim, thank you very much for your time.
I'm very glad to be here. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here, be able to talk about the Law of One.
Thank you. The main reason I reached out to you and to your team, and they were always very friendly, and was the reason that I find out on my research that in Portuguese, despite the fact that the Law of One is in Portuguese, is available, it's free on AOL Research website, and I find out that people who study the material in Portuguese don't go through some deep concepts, or they don't study the whole material, or they are not familiar with the material at all. So this is a really good chance for people to get to know the material, to get to know you a little bit. And I would love to go over the making of the Law of One material and to talk about some of the concepts, the main concepts, and also about AOL Research's work past the raw material up to this day as well. But I would like to begin, if you will, to get to know you a little bit better. So could you please tell us a little bit about yourself up to the moment you got to know Don and Carla?
Oh, goodness. Okay.
Well, a little bit.
I was 31 years old, so I won't cover all the ground, but I had been in a program in Florida called Teacher Corps, working with inner city kids after I graduated high school or college. And at the end of that program, which was a 2-year program, I discovered that there was a fellow in Colorado that had his own type of a school. And this school was devoted to the process of brain self-control, or self-therapy in nature. And it happened at 10,000 feet in the Rocky Mountains, about 40 miles west of Denver. So it was the Adventure Trail Survival School, and the whole idea there was to try to get the brain to function in its natural capacity. If you remove the blockages that kept the consciousness in the old brain, that the brain would circuit consciousness into the frontal lobes, and you would have what is called the frontal lobes experience, and that would be an enhancement to your own growth. So I went through that program, and we used dream analysis and essaying about what was in the dream and what it meant to us. And then when we found blockages that had occurred sometime before the age of 7, usually, that were keeping our energies back in the old brain root stem, then it was possible, and it happened for me, that the consciousness was circuited forward into the frontal lobes, and I had what amounted to an orgasm in my frontal lobes. That meant that the indigo ray was alive and ready to go. And that was the beginning of my going to Kentucky, to the woods of central Kentucky, to start my own school, because the fellow who ran the Adventure Trail Survival School said, we need to share this information with others. And so that's what I set about doing. I lived for 6.5 years on the land, off the grid. I built a log cabin, and continuing studying the spiritual nature of not only my own brain, but everyone's brain, the nature of being of service to others and attempting to help others in their spiritual growth. And by being on the land there, I happened to be, I had a little battery-powered radio. I heard Don and Carla being interviewed one night on a nearby station in Lexington, Kentucky. And they were talking about extraterrestrial communications, which fascinated me to start with. And they were not talking about what the UFOs looked like or what the occupants looked like. They were talking about their philosophy. And they said that the creation was one infinite thought, that this thought contained all of us. We were all part of this creator. We all had a journey to travel in unity with this creator. And that's what each of our lives here in this third density were all about. That we were here with pre-incarnative choices to do what we could to help the energy of the creator go through our energy bodies or our chakras, or as Ra called them, energy centers, so that we could awaken each one and balance them in a fashion that would allow us to perceive clearer and clearer the nature of our lives, the lives of those around us, and how all of this worked together in this infinite creation. So I was able to meet Don and Carla eventually, and I joined their group in December of 1980, and 3 weeks later, the Raw contact began.
Amazing. All right. Well, were you always interested in this subject as a child, or when was the first time that you have any extrasensorial experience or something close to it?
Well, I was what you would call a late bloomer. I think as a child, the only movement into spiritual matters was when I was in the 6th grade. I thought to myself, I wonder how big the universe is. And then after that, what comes? What's after the end of the universe? So other than that, as a kid, I was an athlete, and I loved going out for all the sports, and I was a pretty good student. So it was probably in the last years of college when I became a hippie and joined the hippie revolution and began to look into other ways of perceiving the reality around me. I took other courses. I came back and I didn't want to go ahead and continue with my business and economics degrees. I came back and took all sociology and tried to understand more about how I could be of service to others. And I would guess this is probably the first movement of my own thinking and acting into a realm other than making money and being, a success financially.
All right. Okay. Coming back to the first session that you were just talking about with Don and Carla, was that the first time that you had contact with Ra?
Yes, Don and Carla had been involved with channeling extraterrestrial entities since 1961, 20 years before that. But these were always fourth or fifth density, as they are called. Above our own third density, there's an octave of 8 different densities. And we are now in that third density where we have a mind, a body, and a spirit. And we're trying to make a choice as to how we want to go forward into the fourth density of love and understanding. And so the contacts they had before the raw contact were conscious channeling of fourth densities, planetary minds. This first was Hatan. And then after a few years of channeling the fourth density, they were contacted by a planetary mind of the fifth density called Latwi. And after a few years of doing that, then I joined them. And the raw contact was supposedly with sixth density entities. They were a planetary mind as well of 6.5 million souls that had made the choice back in their own third density on Venus to be of service to others, and had been able to go through the fourth, the fifth, and then the sixth density with that choice of service to others. And then they left the planet Venus as a group, and all 6.5 million moved into what we see as the sun, and began to serve the creator from that level as actually helping to create some of what we call the rays of the sun that are made out of love and light. So Carla then was channeling Ra in a trance state and was not in her body, but was with those of raw, but not conscious of it. For her, the raw contact was simply going to sleep and then waking up. And in between those two times, Ra would have answered Don's questions, whichever ones he asked, as long as they didn't infringe on our free will and make choices for us that we should be making ourselves.
That's a very tricky thing to do.
Clearly,
we always tend to ask something that is related to our choices, right? I think it's in our nature, right? So how were the questions made? You guys got together and then talk about since the first time that you had contact, I think it was not intended to be Ra. Right?
Right. Yeah. On Sunday evenings, they had public meditations where people could come and listen to Confederation philosophy. The Confederation of Planets in the Service of the Infinite Creator was the source of all the contacts that we ever had. So these were for anybody who wanted to come. If you wanted to learn to channel yourself, then you could come to a Wednesday midweek meditation, which we call intensive meditations. And there you could learn to channel. And that was what was happening when Ra first made contact with our group. Don and Carla were there with a young man who wanted to learn how to channel. And it just so happened I was out shopping for groceries. I wasn't there for the first session. In fact, I walked in and interrupted the first session because they were held in the living room and the door from the outside came through the living room. And so I walked in, and in that first session there's a place where Ra says, we must pause and deepen the instrument's concentration or something like that. And that was me walking through the door, interrupting the first session. So yeah, it wasn't anticipated that Ra was going to speak. But once Ra did, Don was very excited because he said to me afterwards, could you transcribe this session right away? This is what we've been waiting 19 years for. And so once I started transcribing the session, I saw what he was talking about. It was a much different level of communication and concepts that were being discussed.
Yes, it is very deep. From this very first session, was this because the sessions they got this very specific setup, right? Carla should be in the specific position with some. Could you please explain that? And also in this first session, I don't think you had this exactly the way it was afterwards, right?
Right. We had no idea that the raw contact was going to happen. So once it did happen, in the second session, Ra gave us the instructions that we should use a table that would contain various elements, a chalice of water, a candle, incense, and the Bible, open to the chapter of John, verse 1. And the reason that Ra suggested this was that Carla was an Episcopalian. And when she was at the church, it was often her duty, her time to serve by dressing the altar in just these very items. So Ra was taking every step possible to make Carla comfortable and inspired by they call them the accoutrements that the Bible, candle, incense, and chalice of water represented. So these were the elements that gave Carla inspiration, as Ra said, of the paradise which she sought. She was a disciple of Jesus. She had many experiences with Jesus when she was 2 years old that were very inspiring and were actually the first time she left her body, I believe. And so Ra went to made every effort to try to make this an experience where she would feel inspired as she was leaving her body and inspired as she came back into her body. So that's what all that was for. And when we first started out, we then got a special room in the house, a bedroom that was not being used for anything else, and that was the Ra room. We had the first 2 sessions in the living room, and then we decided that we needed to make a special room in the house available and purify it and sanctify it for just the Ra contact. So that's what we did.
Okay. I'll make a broad question, and we can talk after that. What is the love one? What is the raw material?
The law of one basically says that we are all part of one infinite creator. We are all like cells in the body. Everything in the universe and every person in the universe is the one infinite creator. As Ross says, every iota of the creation contains the one infinite creator in all of its power. So what we see instead of the creator here, especially in this third density illusion, is different facets of the creator that have been made so that we can travel our journey of seeking the one creator in a way that is most effective. And oddly enough, we discovered that, well, Ra told us that at the beginning of creation, there was not a division between our conscious and subconscious minds. Entities in the third density could see very clearly that they were the creator. Everyone was the creator. But they also knew that they needed to progress and somehow polarize their consciousness in service to others so that they could go through the third density into the fourth and then the fifth and so forth. But it just didn't happen very rapidly because the creation of the creator was a work in progress. And that is what it always is and always has been and probably always will be. It is an infinite process. So when it took so many different 75,000 year cycles of third density for these entities to be able to graduate from it, it was decided by various logoi, or what we would call stars in the sky. The infinite stars in the sky are entities. They are conscious entities. Logos is one, and logoi is plural for multiple ones. So every star you see in the sky has consciousness of the complete 8 densities of being, which we seek to travel through. And it was decided by these logoi that if they could divide the mind into a conscious mind and a subconscious mind and put a veil of forgetting between them and make it impossible to see right away that we are all one, then paradoxically, the process would be enhanced because deep within the heart of our unconscious mind was the knowledge that we are all one. And if we became spiritual seekers, then this knowledge would become more and more available to us. We could not prove it, but if we acted out of faith and used our will to seek the one creator, that more and more of the factual nature of unity of creation would be made clear to us. So that's what we deal with here in this third density. We cannot see that everything around us is part of the creator and that we are all part of the creator. And by not being able to see it, but feel it, then we are able to polarize our consciousness by using what we call meditation or contemplation or prayer or service to others, all these things that we do to become a portion of the creator again. So that's why it isn't obvious, because by it not being obvious, then it makes us work. And that work is like polarizing our consciousness.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely fascinating. The material is fascinating. So all of the sessions were compiled in 5 books, right? All of the transcript that you did were released in 5 books. Am I correct?
Right.
There.
Right. Yeah. The first 4 books did not contain what we call personal material, where we ask questions on our own about ourselves. We took that out because we thought it might be too, well, being personal, it might not be applicable to anybody else. But later on, Carla and I decided that personal material was very valuable, and just because it dealt just with us didn't mean it didn't apply to other people. So we had it published, but we made comments between the sessions, between the personal material, so that a reader could get more of a grasp about what was being talked about for us and then what it would mean to them. So under those conditions, then we decided to go ahead and publish that as the 5th book. So yes, there are 5 books.
Perfect. The first time that I actually read The Law of One, I think I began with the first book, and then I just went over all of them, seeing the subjects and looking for the questions that I was more interested at the beginning.
Right.
But recently, I just went through Living the Law of One, the 101 that Carla wrote.
Mhm.
Actually, I listened to it, and you were the one narrated that on the audiobook.
Right.
And I think it is a very interesting way of beginning to have the contact with the Law One material, because you mentioned some specific wording and some expressions that are very related to the Law One, as service to others, or third density and fourth density, sixth
Right.
density, explaining those levels of consciousness. So this is very specific of the Law One, and that Carla book, the 101, is very interesting material to start learning about the Law One, because all of the information that you guys released, and let's talk about the first four books and the fifth as well, but it is very deep and dense, and ask us a high level of consciousness to really understand what is there, if I ever understood really what is there actually. So I would like to ask you, do you have the perception that you fully understood the Law of One and how it changed your life?
I don't believe it is possible to fully understand the Law of One. I believe that it is possible to get a very good, solid grasp of the basic principles and be able to apply them to our own spiritual journeys. But the reason that Carla wrote Living the Law of One, 101, The Choice, was because the concepts and even the words and sentence structure within the original contact are sometimes very difficult to understand for the average person. So she wanted to make the material more accessible to the average person. And that's why she wrote that book. And I think it was a very good decision to make, because Ross says so many times that understanding is not possible within the third density. Understanding gives you the idea that you really know how everything works, or you grasp all this being said by Ra, and that is very hard to do. I think that we can make some real progress in doing that, and that's part of the fun of reading the book. All of the Law of One. Carl and I read it to each other for, I guess, 34 years that we were together. And we always discovered more information that met us where we were on our spiritual path. So that it does speak to everyone, but there are layers and layers of understanding. And Ra, I don't think Ra ever used the word understanding without qualifying it by saying, so to speak, or if we may use this misnomer, or what we're doing in this illusion, this third density, is trying to get to the fourth density of love and understanding. Apparently, in fourth density, understanding is possible because there is no veil of forgetting. So we are all having to filter information from the Law of One or any other spiritual source we want to grasp through that veil of forgetting. And that is a more or less difficult procedure. And for those who are more aware of the other spiritual information and have been on the path for quite a while, it's more likely that they would have better success at doing that. So understanding is used with a kind of an asterisk. We're working on it, and we can travel that path in some degree, but it's difficult.
It is, definitely it is. Reading the Law of One and understanding what, or trying to understand after this explanation, who Ra is, this collective consciousness.
Right.
From the sixth density, and we as a unique consciousness from the third density try to understand each other, try to exchange information between each other. So it seems to me that it was not the first time that Ra as a collective tried to do this, right? They tried in the past, and it was not 100% the way they thought, right?
Right. They attempted to even walk among the Egyptians 11,000 years ago. because at that time the Egyptians had been able to manifest a type of consciousness which Ra felt had the potential to utilize the law of one as their next step in their evolutionary path. They had the concept of pantheism. They saw that the creator was everywhere in the universe. And so that was close enough to the law of one for Ra to attempt to walk among the Egyptians and to share more of the law of one with them. However, their visit was kind of shortened by the fact that the Egyptians tended to worship them as gods. And that was not at all what Ra felt was appropriate, because they were not gods. They were brothers and sisters that were there to try to help the Egyptians move forward in their evolution. So the first thing, the problem was being worshipped as gods. And then the second thing they did was to reserve Ra's teachings for those who were rich and powerful. And these teachings were meant for everybody. So Ra felt that these were significant distortions or misperceptions of the law of one that required them to leave the Egyptians and retire to, as they said, the inner planes of the earth, to consider what they needed to do to make reparations or to try to remove or balance the distortions in the law of one for which they felt responsible. They didn't blame the Egyptians. They thought, well, somehow we were naive enough to think that we could do this and these things wouldn't happen, and yet they happened. So now what are we going to do to try to straighten this out? And later on, about 3,500 years ago, there was an Egyptian pharaoh by the name of Akhenaten. And they were able to contact this pharaoh directly through, same way they contacted Carla, through trance. And Akhenaten and his wife Nefertiti and his, we're not sure if it was his brother or his cousin, Smenkhara, were apparently all together and bringing through information of the law of one. So at this point, Akhenaten declared the law of one as the law of the land, the basic principles that everyone needed to study and to use in their own spiritual journeys. And so for the time of Akhenaten's incarnation until he died, this was the situation, although apparently the priests at that time were only giving lip service to it. They didn't really have the same opinion of the law of one that Akhenaten did. So after he passed away, the people quickly reverted to the old many gods and the old ways of looking at the life around them. So they tried once again to find someone to communicate with. From that point on, though, their most usual type of communication was in dreams, where people would get inspiring dreams and not really know exactly where they were coming from, but they would feel inspired by some message in the dream and begin their spiritual journey as a result of that. And eventually then they were able to contact our group and have, again, a mind-to-mind type of communication where word concepts could be transferred and we could make a book and hopefully make it available worldwide for free, which we do on our website by PDF downloads.
Yes, perfect. One of the, I think one of the main concepts that I try to understand, I have to use myself as an example, is the concept of serving to others or serving to self, and the difference between them. And it was not until recently, as I finished Carla's book, that I think I understood some of the differences as she explained some examples on a day-to-day basis. She talks about driving on the street and some basic things on a day-to-day basis that you can choose to be service to others or service to self. What I would like to ask you is that in the law of one, it is said that we need more than 50%, 51% of service to others to graduate. That's another wording of the law of one. So I understand graduate as passing through third density consciousness to fourth density
right.
consciousness. So how can we do that? Is there any tip?
Well, there isn't really a good way that we can measure it. Carla always said you can't take your own spiritual temperature, but what you can do is intend to be of service to others in your thoughts, in your words, and in your deeds. And this intention is what is really the most important thing. And like you said, only 51% is necessary, just enough to turn the balance so that eventually you can go further in the higher densities. Then you can refine that. So you move higher and higher in your perfection or of service to others. The service to self part of the program of planet Earth is that there are what you would call negatively oriented entities that wish to help people become negatively oriented. And if they are 95% service to themselves by controlling others and enslaving them, then they can proceed further in their own spiritual evolution. And these slaves are willing slaves because that negative path they feel is the path that will be most helpful to them as they move forward in their evolution. By controlling others and enslaving them, they take that power and use it to move forward. And those who are enslaved then learn how to do that themselves to yet other people. So it's a kind of a passing the ball of enslavement down further and further. So the entire negative social memory complex is what it's called, can move forward. This type of negative polarity is viable and possible to pursue all the way through the fourth density of love and understanding and the fifth density of wisdom or light. But once they reach the sixth density where you have to balance love and wisdom and see all others as yourself, then the negative path has to be reversed. It has to be turned around. As Ra said, the one creator blinks neither at the light nor the dark, because all are the creator, whether they're positive or negative. However, when the negative entities get to the sixth density, they have to see that not only are they the creator, but every other person that they've enslaved is the creator too, the same as they are. So they reverse their polarity and become positively oriented. And then once you get past the middle of the sixth density, which is 75 million years long, then the concept of polarity is no longer necessary to be used as a means of polarization of your consciousness. By that point, both the positive and the negative entities have done all the polarizing possible, and then the further progress is made by simple utilizing of the knowledge that you have, the balance of the love and the wisdom, and which creates a kind of power to be of more effective service.
This is extremely interesting. So we have two paths, one the positive, one the negative. The positive has no ending. You can just go up and never have to stop, right? So
right.
The negative, if you choose the negative, you have to come back and redo some things and understand things in some other ways, because you have reached your limit, and you say it's on the sixth density, right? So
right.
It is 100% better to go on the positive side and have no way to redo anything.
Well, if you look at the reason for evolution, and Ra said that in the beginning there was only intelligent infinity, and at some point this intelligent infinity discerned a concept of free will, and it utilizes free will to decide how to know itself better. And the way that it decided to do that was to make the creation that we experience out of love, or these various logoi, the stars in the sky, and to focus the free will through these love entities. Then the light would result, or the photon, and it would condense into what we see as galaxies, as planets, as various kinds of life forms on them that have the decision and free will themselves to make choices of how they will proceed in their spiritual path. Every choice every one of us ever makes in any incarnation is a way of giving the Creator more ways of knowing itself, the purpose of the entire creation. It also gives us more ways of knowing the Creator and of knowing ourselves. So this is a win-win-win situation. It is all because the Creator wanted to know how to know more about itself through all the free will choices that all of us make.
Fascinating. It seems to me that the danger is being on something between 6% and 50% of service to others in the middle, not in the positive or the negative side, right? And
Right.
we can get those mixed, right? It is hard to understand that difference sometimes.
It is. Ra called that group of entities that are between the two polarities the sinkhole of indifference. They have not made choices. Most of these entities are not on a spiritual path. Much of planet Earth falls into this category. When these choices are not made to go one way or the other, and the third density ends after 3 cycles of 25,000 years, 75,000 years total, then such entities have to choose another third density planet so that they can try again. There isn't any punishment for not making the graduation. There's no hell. But there is the necessity of finding another third density planet to try again. And it seems like planet Earth is such a planet that many entities on other third density planets who have not made the graduation into the fourth density have come here to make that choice again. And it seems to be one of the contributing factors as to why there is so much disharmony and anger and separation and disillusionment on our planet Earth.
Yes, we can definitely see that. Is there something related to accepting God's will when we say something happened on our lives and we say, "Oh, that's God's will," or "Let it be," or not having accountability of what we do in our lives, or not being aware of the agreements that we made before coming here, or as using the terms of the law one, not seeing those catalysts in our lives, how to deal with it, and making choices when facing those catalysts. Is this something related to service to others or service to self, the choice?
Yes. As far as God's will or the Creator's will, there is every right of choice, every free will choice that an entity makes is acceptable. However, we can all make higher and higher choices that are more inclusive so that we see not only our own benefit from our choices, but we see how our choices can benefit others. And this is a way we can polarize our own consciousness to be more and more in harmony with the will of the Creator to know itself. So we become co-creators as we make these choices. And as we decide that we want to become more enlightened or more service-oriented or more informed, then these free will choices are our attempt to become able to express the will of the Creator in higher and higher ways. And this is what our spiritual path is all about. So you can say that the will of the Creator is being realized at every level of evolution, but it is also our free will to enhance that level of our free will choices and be of service to others or service to self, and then eventually become one with the Creator at the end of the 7th density and the beginning of the 8th density.
All right. Another difficult concept for me to understand and to fully understand or try to understand is the harvest. So I believe it's the end of a cycle, and when we are being evaluated somehow on this percentage of serving to self or service to others, and then we have to move on, whether to another planet in 3rd density or to another realm in 4th density. Is that the correct perception of harvest?
Yes, the harvest apparently is going on right now. Every entity that passes from this life and the body dies, then will go on and walk into the light. Ross suggests that there are entities that provide this light as a means of evaluating our choice, whether we've been able to make that 51% level necessary for harvest, is reflected in how our chakras are aligned, how they're activated and how they're open, and especially the green ray, the heart chakra. That one is most important. So what that light does, it gets a kind of a reading from the chakras, and especially the green ray, so that we are able to withstand the impact of the light of fourth density. So we are walking into the light, and as we find that it becomes too glaring, too much to handle, then we step aside. And where we step aside may be third density, higher in third density, or it may be in the fourth density. If we can welcome and enjoy fourth density light, then we have graduated. And we have the entire 30 million years of the fourth density to perfect that 51% service to others ability that has gotten us into the fourth density.
All right. So, in your opinion, everything that we are seeing in the world right now, difficult 2020 that we had, 2021 is not that different. Is it part of the harvesting? Is it part of the end of the end of a cycle? Is it part of the negative and the positive being polarized?
Yes, all of what you see going on is a chance for people to make that choice, one way or the other, positive or negative. And all of this interaction that is so difficult and disharmonious provides what Ra calls catalyst. Catalyst is a neutral factor in any chemical reaction. It causes things to happen. So the catalyst is the interaction that may be disharmonious. And a positively oriented entity will see this catalyst as something which it wishes to process in a manner which it will be able to see how it is the kind of entity that it may see in front of it that is not behaving in a way that it would wish to behave, and yet can see that this is also the creator. So there is an effort made to see that this other self, as Ra would call other people, we're all other selves to each other. This other self is also the creator, though we may find that it is difficult to communicate with this other self because it seems to be disharmonious. It wants to say things that we feel are incorrect, that they're hurtful. But if we can take that into our own meditations when we're alone at the end of the day and see that that is our other self, that the quality that they were expressing is something that is in us too. We are all the same. We are everything, every being, every event, every emotion. We are all one. So once we can realize that we are the thief, the robber, the rapist, the dancer, the poet, the mystic, we are all these things, and find that out in our meditation, then in the positive sense, we are using that catalyst to grow. In the negative sense, entities would have to use that catalyst in order to control others and to take their power and to become more negatively polarized in that sense. And that's the way we could use this catalyst. There is so much catalyst in the world, so much disharmony, that depending upon your choice of polarity, if you've made a choice, and so many haven't, if you've made a choice, then you can use all of this as grist for the mill, as Baba Ram Dass said, as food for your soul, as a way to grow into the knowledge of your unity with everybody on the planet.
Yes, the challenge is to make the choice, right?
Right.
And actually to see that you made the choice, because I think, well, maybe almost 100% of the time we think that we made a choice and we didn't. And that's the challenge.
Well, it's a choice that you need to continue making. It's not one and done. With everything we do every day, we continue making that choice and reinforcing it and polarizing more consciously. So it's something, it's an ongoing process. We're a work in process.
Perfect. Jim, as we are almost going to the end of our conversation here, there are a couple of questions I would like to do to you. The first one, when was the last time that you spoke to Ra? Was it on the last session of the Law 1 or afterwards?
It was the last session. That was March 15th, 1984.
Okay. And I believe you've been speaking to other collective groups as well. Who
Right.
is the Quo Group? Am I saying that correct?
Yes, Quo is a very interesting principle. It's made up of three planetary consciousnesses. The first one is the first entity that Don and Carla began channeling back in 1961, and that's Haton, a planetary consciousness, the fourth density of the love and understanding. And then the second one is Latui that I told you about, the fifth density planetary consciousness of wisdom. And then the third one is Ra in a step down fashion, which does not require trance, but the information is not as precise. However, when you take these three together, then they form the principle that is now being channeled, has been channeled since 1986, about 2 years after the Ra contact ended. Then this group of three different planetary minds, including Ra, joined together so that they could continue sharing what we call Confederation philosophy, that this is a unified creation, that we all live by the power of love that made the light that forms everything, every material quality in our universe.
All right. So you still talk to Ra, but on the fifth density, not the
Yeah,
sixth density Ra.
well, it's still Ra, but there's like a filter. I don't know exactly how to describe it accurately, but they cannot be as precise and profound as they were when they were speaking through Carla. But still, those general concepts of unity, the balance of love and wisdom, are available to be shared in their more basic sense. And so usually La Tui is the one who actually voices the words. But when they make contact with us, they say, we're those of Quo. And that lets us know that we've got Haton, Latui, and Ra on the line.
Is that the way you vet the messages that you received? If they speak about we are all one, about love and light, is that the way you actually say, oh, this is a good messenger or message, or this is something that I still need to work on? How do you do that?
You're talking about the messages we get from Quo or other channels in general? Or?
For any channel.
Okay. Well, that would be my preference, but that doesn't mean that a channel that doesn't concentrate on love and light and unity isn't a valid channel giving helpful information. Our particular preferences are for that kind of information, and we try to ask questions of a general spiritual nature so that those of Quo can give us information along those lines of love, light, and unity. But we are aware that there are other groups around, especially some people's inner guides can give information that has the same basic feel to it. It may not speak of it precisely, but what they're giving is still very useful information. So it's all a matter of preference. I mean, no matter who you are as a reader or a listener through the law of one, it's your preference and your discrimination that's the most important thing. You have to decide whether the information you're reading, whether it comes from Ra or any other entity, is valuable to you. Because each of us is a unique entity, and at some point on every spiritual path, any information can be helpful. So we don't judge other informations if they don't, repeat what Ra has to say. We know that there are other ways of expressing these concepts that are very helpful to people. So that's just our own choice.
Okay. Could you please tell us what AOL Research do those days, and for the people who are accessing the website for the first time, watching us right now, what can they find? I know there is a course with you as beginners for the Law of One, that it's available online. There's the Camelot Journal that you write almost every day. I read a couple, and when I can, I read your notes as well. So what can we find on AOL Research?
Well, interesting you asked that question, because we are just now right at the verge of putting out our new website, which is going to have a whole lot of information on it that is not available currently at our archive website. Our archive website is www.allresearch.org. And then we have a social action website, www.bringforth.org. On these two websites, the archive site especially, are all the channelings that have ever been done at AOL Research. And you can search them. If you use a word that you want to get information on processing catalyst, then you could put processing catalyst in, and every session that has that phrase in it would be brought to you to look at. So there's all the channelings there. We have podcasts that we do. We've done about 100 of them, Gary, Austin, and I, on various topics of the Law of One. We've had guests on our podcasts, and we let them share what they've got to share, their spiritual journey, and relate it to the Law of One. And there are, let's see, different workshops that we've had. As you mentioned, the International Metaphysical University, you can take their course in Living the Law of One 101, The Choice, and then you'd be communicating with me, and I'd be going through each of the 12 chapters with you. And Carla always had a little essay or question she asked at the end of each chapter that people make a response to let us know how they are taking the information in and using it. And we have homecomings. We announce different homecomings where people from around the world are invited to come. That we have about 40 people here that come to my house, and we have a tent outside and a gathering over Labor Day weekend. We put out a newsletter. We've put out, I guess, since 1981, we've put out 4 newsletters a year. Each quarter we come out with one, and we try to choose some of the more inspiring of the channelings that are available and put them out in a newsletter form. We can send them out either over the email or hard copy for folks that don't have computers, and there's still a few around that don't. And all upcoming events are mentioned on there. There are forums on Bring Forth where you can discuss various topics with other people to see if you have something to add to their understanding or they have something to add to your understanding. I know I'm forgetting a whole lot. There's a lot of material there, but like I say, there's going to be a lot more coming up very soon, in the next couple of weeks, as a matter of fact.
Perfect. That's good to hear. And everyone can download the Law of One material for free. It's
Right.
Of course in English, in Portuguese, in Spanish, so everyone can go there at no cost. And there are a lot of other books. I mentioned just one, Carla's book, Living the Law of One, the 101 that I just finished. That's why I'm talking a lot about this book, and I think it's great. So, Jim, thank you very much for your work. First of all, thank you very much for your time and patience to talk to us. And I really hope it's the first of many conversations that we will have.
Well, it's been an honor to be here with you, and I'll be happy to talk anytime in the future that you want to talk, Fabio. It's a pleasure. I can tell that you are a really wise and accelerated student of the Law of One, and I'm happy to talk to you anytime.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Guys, thank you. See you next time.